Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Value Stacks, the supplementary video anyway to Value Stacks, a new larger slate article that I'll be producing for NHL DFS, coming out of the DFS Army, dfsarmy.com, where we turn everyday Joes into DFS pros. I cannot speak enough about the DFS Army and the community that we have built with optimizers, research stations for every sport, coaches. We have over 18 coaches and over 22 contributors now. We have a track record of producing six-figure winners in the NFL, multiple five-figure winners up to $50,000 and beyond in NBA. We have live final qualifiers for baseball, for NFL, NBA as well. We have really and truly just a lot of success and a lot of testimonials, so I recommend you go to dfsarmy.com, take a look at us, follow the link in the description in this video, or click the link in the article that it accompanies. Let's dive right in today. Knock this research out as quickly as possible. We have not the largest slate in the world, so this video should not take very long. The first thing that we do when we dig into numbers is we're looking for Vegas. What teams are in good spots tonight, and where might we be headed with our goalie? In NHL DFS, it's very important to pick your goalie and get that win if you can. And the best way to determine the win and all of those points out of your goalie is going to be Vegas. Now, last night, doesn't happen all the time. Last night we had a three-game slate. All three underdogs won. That's not necessarily going to happen every night. So we try to stick with the biggest odds favorites we can. A 125 could go either way. A 176, a little bit more confidence out of Vegas that the Columbus Blue Jackets and Bobrovsky are going to get the win tonight. So this is probably the first one on the slate that I would be looking towards. I would come down here, see if we can't find something that produces a little bit better. Just off the top of my head, it looks like Bobrovsky is going to be where we're going to lean. I don't trust Edmonton. The Washington Capitals on the back-to-back. They have their backup goalie, Grubauer, in. And it looks like, this is actually a home and home. These are fun. They used to happen a lot more often. And, Hellebuck, maybe he can produce some upside. We've got another backup down in Chicago on their back-to-back. Got an over-under of a 6. We tend to try to stay away from that. We try to stick with the 5.5s. We would go to a website like Vegas, vegasinsider.com, maybe the Score app on your phone, someplace that would track the odds and the line movements throughout the day. We're also looking for which way Vegas is leaning on that over-under. Is it a 5.5 U favoring the under, or is it a 6-0 favoring the over in a 6 game? So those are just a couple little tips you can do research on your own. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to dive into some of these lines, see which offenses we would like to stack. We would obviously like to sit on games that are scheduled to score over 3 goals and hopefully land a couple of those goals on one of our lines that we tend to stack up. Stacking is obviously very, very important in NHL. So let's first start by finding the value on the day. Then we'll dig into some lines and some production. I put that in the article. I picked a couple of players. I told you why. I'm going to show you how I find that number. I run into Roto Grinders, free tool. Thank you, Roto Grinders. Much appreciated. Free to everybody. Jump out there, go into their skater stats under their NHL tab, and take a look. Sort it by the site you're on. And I'd like to take the last 4 weeks. I like to roll with hot skaters. I like to roll with hot baseball hitters when baseball season rolls around. Not too far before catchers and pitchers report, by the way. But we're going to sort by salary today. And we're going to go down and select all at the bottom of the page. We're going to look at everybody across the slate. We're going to see where our value lies. I want to see over a 4-week sample, I want to see a high average points per cost of the player. So as I scroll up, I'm starting to look for big numbers. 9, maybe Marcus Granlund is in play. 10.5, Mark Janikowski may be in play. These guys I haven't checked to see if they're in lineups or anything yet. Adam Lowry may be in play. That's pretty cheap, $3,500 for about a 12 per game. You might want to double check these. Armia in Winnipeg. The reason that we picked Army, he's got exposure to the power play too. He's producing a lot lately. You can click on the link in his name, pop up the window, scroll down the recent fantasy points game log, and see that in 3 of his last 5 games, he's produced 14 points or more. He's got a 32-point upside. in there. When I click on the game log, I can see why that's happening. I can look at the minutes that he's playing and notice that he's getting a bump from 10 to 12 minutes up to almost 20 minutes per game. He's only scored 1 goal. He's chipped in a couple of assists. So that's not a lot of point production. So there, for the cheap price, there'd better be some activity production over here in shots on goal, and we see it 6, 4, 2, 5, 4. And we're seeing that this is when he puts a point in there, it's also producing. When he does not put a point in there, he's still getting you upwards of 8 points for that $3,500 in salary cap hit that you're taking. You get access to that power play 2 line, and you're in an okay matchup tonight with Winnipeg. So that would be one place I would look. The other place I would look would be, up into here, Hannafin, Biega. Scrolling up a little bit more, once I get up into the upper threes, I want a little bit more like 10 points per game. So I'm looking at Hartman in Chicago. We talked a lot about Chicago in the article. Chychrun, we talked a lot about him in the article. Scrolling up even more, Osterley, talked a lot about Chicago. Osterley's on a tear. Scrolling up even more, we can go all the way up if you want. 14 points for Edler at $5K, pretty good price. If I scroll up even higher, 15 points at $5K for Ferland, good price. 16 points for Seth Jones, $5.5K. These are guys that are bringing value night in and night out. Giordano. You want to see why? I'll show you why. We click on Giordano. We know he's a power play defenseman. We scroll down again and start taking a peek at what he's produced. The run he's been on. 4 of his last 5 games have been pretty good. 6 out of his last 8 have been pretty solid. Probably cash playable. Hockey's a fluky sport. Not every, cash playable is a very, very relative term we use loosely. But here's why. 20, 25 minutes per game, goals sprinkled in, 2-goal upside, assists sprinkled in, possibly power play bonus assists. So you're getting some consistent point production, and on Fanduel, that's very, very important. Then we look into shots on goal and blocked shots. I find a better results going over to Draftkings, looking inside their game logs, clicking on the player there, and looking at the last 10 games. Blocked shots plus shots on goal shows me a lot about a defenseman. And at cheap prices over on DraftKings, activity is rewarded over there. You can find very, very good defensemen in that area. So what we're looking at here is a lot of shots on goal, probably quite a few blocked shots. They're not displayed on this graphic. Producing fantasy points, a decent floor, 6, 7, 8 points in floor because of that activity. But then put a goal or an assist on the board, and boom, your points per dollar very, very much jump with the Giordano. And when they're in a good spot tonight, then you want to look towards these guys. Just because you're paying higher prices doesn't mean you're not getting value. I mean, the name of the game is to get value everywhere you look when it comes to daily fantasy hockey. So these are some of the guys that we're going to look for. This is kind of how you go looking. We're going to pick your own players, man. Don't just rely on me. When we dive into the actual lineup building phase, I will show you how we do that. The next thing that we want to do is we want to go into fantasy hockey, leftwinglock.com, another free website. I like to sort by 3 games, so if you want to go all season long or go 10 games, it's fine. I take a look at the forward combos and the defensive pairings. I click submit. I scroll down here. Instead of 10, I want to open up 25 entries because I want a little bit bigger picture. And I start tracking who's scoring the goals, which lines are doing the damage. Now, a lot of them are, the reason for 25 entries is a lot of these guys aren't playing tonight. In fact, down to Calgary, the number 6 line in the last 3 games, the top 5 aren't even playing tonight. So this is the hottest line we've got going available on our slate tonight. And we want to look also at who's giving up the goals. And we sort by that category and start looking at what lines we can target. We can target the Teravainen line in Carolina. Carolina's on there twice in the top 10. So line 1 and line 2 are vulnerable right now. We want to be attacking them. Therefore, it is no secret that I listed the Washington power play unit as my number 1 line tonight to be looking at. I know they burned people recently. I know they might not be wicked hot, but you've got Backstrom and Carlson feeding from the defensive side of things. On the counter, really quarterbacking that power play and feeding Ovechkin over there on that left dot. And Ovechkin is literally a hat trick waiting to happen every night. He tied for the league lead in goals. So if you want to run all 3 out there, that's fine. If you want to do a little more of a cash type of move and drop down into the Washington line, wherever the hell Washington went tonight, There we go. Goodness, I was having a brain fart. I was thinking that maybe they had the night off, and I knew it was a home and home. You want to drop down, take Kuznetsov. You get power play 1 exposure, with Backstrom. This power play 2 is a freaking lie. We know Ovechkin's on the 1. He's listed on the 2 because he doesn't ever sit. He's almost always out there on the power play units. They sub out 3 or 4 other guys and just keep Ovechkin on the ice. You got your Carlson down here, and this is another lie. Niskanen is not on the power play 1. He comes in, if Carlson's taking a little bit of a breather. But anyway, you've got Ovechkin sitting out there. You've got access to him with Kuznetsov and with Backstrom. With Backstrom, you share a line with him, so you got even strength exposure to him as well. And then, of course, Carlson. Juice I don't know if Juice, whatever his name is really a value player or not. No exposure to the power play, and I haven't seen how he's been doing lately. But this is just a couple of things that we're looking to do. And with this line, if you want to run Kuznetsov, Backstrom, and Carlson, you get exposure to both Carolina 1 and Carolina 2, both of which are giving up goals like a freaking sieve right now. So that's how you start to pinpoint where you want to do your attacking. The second line that we mentioned was the Columbus Blue Jackets line. Columbus Blue Jackets also on a back-to-back, but they're facing Vancouver. Vancouver is not a phenomenal defensive team. This number 1 line actually was not all that good defensively when you look at the numbers. Over here on left wing lock, they were giving up some of the numbers. Vanek, Gagne, and Beeser, which this one has them as the top line. So that's just great. What we're going to do is we're going to try to predict when this line jumps out on the ice, who's coming to attack them. Probably Columbus's top line. Columbus gets the last change tonight. They get the later shift change tonight. So when we're rolling lines in nonstop end-to-end action, we're going to start spelling players. Vancouver's going to go first. Columbus gets the right to react to what they do and get the matchup they want. I'm going to assume, being that this is the leakier line of the two, that the top scoring line of Columbus is going to be attacking that line. Therefore, Columbus Blue Jackets 1 is in a good spot. You can run them up there on the power play. Their number 1 defensive pairing in Jones and Werenski. Pick your poison. I like Jones. He's running a little bit hotter. $300 is not a big difference. But what I'm trying to do is get a power play, a defensive pairing that is shooting a ton of shots towards the goal. That creates a lot of garbage goals for these guys down low to go bang in those rebounds. Now, the power play 1, Foligno, is also a value play. If you want to take a look at why, we've got a fair amount of points in the last 3 games. We've got some shots on goal in those last 3 games and put 2 biscuits in the basket, so he might be running a little bit hot. So that's basically how we're going to do this. Let's discuss really quickly this Chicago debacle. Chicago's looked really, really good the past few games, and you've got guys scattered all over the place. So let me show you another little trick here. Taves, Hinistrova, Saad, great picks, cheap picks on that top line. Kane, Hartman, Schmaltz all working together on the power play 1. Nice little stack. Now, again, they're at home. We know that the Winnipeg Jets can be a little bit of a defensive liability. They can score too. So this game might go 3-4 or 5-4, something like that, and end up being quite the shootout. So that might be a little bit of a knock on Hellebuck, but at the same time, it might be a nice little bonus to both these sets of lines. If you want to game stack this one in a GPP, I would recommend this is a pretty decent game to take that chance. We've got Sharp down here on the power play 2. Osterley and Duncan Keith are shooting like crazy as well. But if you took Osterley because he's significantly cheaper, he's one of the better values going on the slate. Run him up there with Patrick Sharp and Saad and Hinistrova. You got access to the power play 2. That gives you access to about another 4 skaters. He's on the number 1 pairing, though, which means he's going to overlap a lot with the Taves line and the Kane line as well. So you're going to get some exposure to those guys. When you look at the power play units, you've got Kane, Hartman, and Schmaltz on the same line as Taves. That's a pretty decent little line to stack, but it's expensive. So if we're looking for value and way to get into it, Taves might be as high as I go, because with Taves, I still do get exposure to a big night out of Kane on one of those nights. Also, I've got cheaper exposure, Hartman and Schmaltz, that also share a line with Kane. So I might actually enjoy running Taves and, say, Schmaltz together, being that they've been running fairly hot. And I got to use both my centers to do it. I mentioned that in the article, but it's a very unique way to get exposure to both power play units, Kane and Osterley complementing the bit. How do you do that? You go back up here to NHL line production out of left wing lock. You go to the line combos. You get to the Chicago Blackhawks. Now we're going to look at not even strength. We want to look at the power play. We don't want to look at not even the last game. Let's say the most recent 3 games. Click submit. Let's see what percentage of the time these guys are running together, because we know lines flip-flop. Different guys take penalties. Osterley on the first unit. Keith on the second unit. But a 20% bump in time isn't bad considering these other 3 are down here, and you've got Keith on both of those, Osterley on this one. So the bottom line is you got a lot of time that these 2 defensemen are sitting out there on the power play unit, no matter which one you run. Out here you've got Kane and Schmaltz, Taves, and Sharp on the top line. 30% of the time, that's the lineup combination they're using. But look, Taves and Kane are on both these lines. So is Schmaltz. So you've got Kane, Schmaltz, and Taves out there almost all the time. 30% plus 20%, 50% of the time. Over half the time they're on a power play. Those 3 guys are out there together. So your cheap exposure to Kane is Schmaltz and Taves. You want to run a little Patrick Sharp in there, look what that does for you up here on the starting lineups page. So if I run Taves and Schmaltz, and then I want to complement that, whoop, Patrick Sharp. All the way down here on the 4th line, oh sure, that's not the best situation ever, but it's cheap and it's correlated. And if I look at his minutes, 13, 14 minutes, 11 to 13 minutes is about the norm. That's not terrible. We've also got a hot Patrick Sharp, 3 goals in 5 games. Got an assist popped in there too. 25-point upside, maybe higher. He's got some activity with some shots on goal. Get you a few shots per game. If he puts a point up on the board, then you're going to hit value, no questions asked. 3 out of his last 5 games have been 15 points or higher. That is great for that price. So it's a good, cheap way to get access to these guys. Now, if I've got Taves and I've got Schmaltz and I've got Patrick Sharp, I've got access to 3 of the 4 lines of scoring. I don't care if this game goes 5 goals now, because I'm going to get some access to some of the scoring. I've spread my risk out for cash games. I didn't focus it like I'd want to for GPPs, so it's a little more of a cash play. But it's a pretty cheap way to get a lot of overlap with Osterley or Keith, whichever one you pick. Probably Osterley with a cheaper price. And then you've got correlation with a little bit of Sharp, but a lot with Schmaltz and Taves. Taves gives you access to this top line should they do the scoring. Kane gives you access to this, or Schmaltz gives you access to the second line should they do the scoring. Sharp gets you access to a hot goal scorer right now in the last 5 games, and they're all sitting on the same power play. So when they start ringing the puck around, boing, 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 bang, one goes in, lights the red lamp. You've got access to it, and you've probably got multiple access to it. You might even get lucky and post that 30 burger that I'm going to start coining the phrase 30 burger and tell you that when I get both assists and the goal, I've got 31.1 points or more on Fanduel when it's on the power play. I get the shot on goal, 2 assists, the goal, and I get the power play bonus for both assists and the goal. That's what you're aiming for in hockey. You want to jump up a leaderboard awfully quickly? There you go. On a night where it may only take 150 points, hell, 122 was winning things last night. 150 points to have a good night in hockey on Fanduel, and a 30 burger gets you 20% of your night's production right there in one single play. That's why we stack in hockey. That's why we're correlated in hockey. All right, let's jump over here really quick. And let's plug in a little bit of these stacks and see where it takes us with the money. If we we haven't put a goalie in there yet. Who'd we say we liked? Bobrovsky, Hellebuck. Let's go ahead and drop Bobrovsky in there. And let's see what that does. You're generally going to pay up for goalies because you want the consistent points. And if we look at Bobrovsky's game log, I don't know that we're going to find, 12, 32, 30. It's okay. It's not exactly stellar. You've had some bad days down in there too. Goalies have been very, very fluky lately. You just roll with the hot Vegas hand, a guy that's producing points. Hope it works out for you. You're generally going to pay up for that consistency. That is very, very true. But if you could find a heavy favorite down lower, you might pay down and save some money as well. The other thing I'll tell you about goalies really quick, then we'll move on. Goalies, the 12 points for the victory on Fanduel is not as important as it is over on Draftkings. You think that the 12 points is massively important, and it is, but it's not going to make or break your night. The reason why is some nights let's say it takes 150 points to cash on a night over on Fanduel. 12 points isn't even 10% of your points. Hell, God forbid you go up to 200 points that it takes to cash some nights in hockey when the chalk really goes off, and that 12 points is barely 5% of your production. You just don't need it every single night like you maybe need in a starting pitcher in baseball. It's important, don't get me wrong, but it's not required to win. You can still win without it. So I want to lean that direction for those favorites, but I also want a lot of shots on goals and very few goals allowed. That directs me to very good franchise goalies, which leads me to the top of the list and why I'm typically paying up for them anyway. Now, when we want to stack, if we wanted to go into Washington and we wanted to look at that first line, whether or not we use Ovechkin remains to be seen. But we run down here, we pick up Backstrom, and if we wanted to run Kuznetsov, now we're at 5,800 per player. If we drop out, say, Edler and throw Carlson in there for the full 4 stack, now we're dropped all the way down to 5,200 per player. But over 2 guys left with the value of Armia and Chychrun, we can do it. So that's not too hard to accomplish tonight. If you wanted to leave Ovechkin out, put Carlson back in there, you're still at 6,400 for 3 wingers. You can do that. Okay? So if I had, who'd I have in there? Edler. That was in the Vancouver game. Put him back in there, and let's take out Kuznetsov and Backstrom, and let's move to the Chicago line and play with that a little bit. If I want, I probably could use Kane tonight if I wanted to. Okay? So if you're not that value-oriented or you wanted to pay up on defense instead of take your value there, you could probably use Kane. First thing we would probably do, let's go ahead and do that. Let's drop those guys out. Let's pick up Osterley at 4,200 since he's a value play in his own right. Let's take Patrick Kane, and then let's see if we can run Taves. Let's see where that gets us. Kane, Taves, and Osterley. Access on the power play 1. Got top line, second line scoring. And I'm pretty spread out for cash. If I wanted to focus that in a little bit tighter. Oops, what'd I say? Where's Schmaltz? Use both my centers anyway. Then I've still got 5,600 left for a defenseman and 2 wingers. You can do that. If I take Kane out and just run that on its own, Schmaltz, Taves, Osterley, I've got 6,300 for 4 spots. I can do that. I can dig for a little bit more value somewhere. Like let's say I wanted to run Edler as my other, or Chychrun for crying out loud. If I wanted to run Edler, I'm at 6,800 for 3 spots, and even worse yet, if I wanted to run Chychrun, 7,100 for 3 spots. You can see how important that value is when you plug it in and play with it, right? All right, let's get rid of Osterley, Schmaltz, Taves, and let's take a little bit different approach. Let's go to Columbus. Let's run that top line. Plug in Dubois. I said, who did I say? I said Foligno, but you could run Panarin, Foligno, and here was our defenseman, Jones. Boom, there's a 4 stack, and you got 7,600 for a center and a winger. So if I wanted to jump back up into that Chicago game, 7,500, I could probably take Taves for the top line, probably take Chychrun out, put Osterley back in there. And now I've got 1 spot at 7,900. Goodness gracious. Go back to all, punch the wing in there. You want Line? You want Johnny Hockey? I mean, you can put them in there tonight. We're not going to have a problem with tonight with prices. You know, I could even take Armia out, and at 5,700 each, if I wanted to run Winnipeg, could probably come down here. Well, I'm under 5,700, so if I ran me a little Kyle Connor, I can't get Wheeler because the center spot's gone. But goodness, I could easily stack him with Ehlers. I can't quite get Line. If I wanted to get Line, I need to find $1,400. Where am I going to find $1,400? I can take Panarin off of there and run in 5,900. Find some value there. Saad in Chicago. Teravainen on a hot Washington team. He's having himself. I mean, that's a lineup right there. It doesn't matter what you guys do and how you do it. You play around. Start with some of your value, lock that stuff in, start upgrading, start picking out the stacks that you want, rock and roll. There's your 25 minutes. That's your slate broken down. A couple of different ways to play it, lots of different ways to go. Don't forget to click at the bottom of this. There's a little bit of a link to the Ladder Up video series if you want to watch that. I will also include the NHL for Dummies series that we're working on. We've got 2 parts of that complete. If you want to learn hockey with a video supplement, a little bit of article of explanation, we'll have that linked into the article too. Thanks a lot, guys, for listening. Don't forget to click like. Don't forget to click subscribe. Follow me out on Twitterland at Chopadong, and consider becoming a VIP inside DFSArmy.com. Use the coupon code CHOP, C-H-O-P, for the 10% discount because friends don't let friends pay retail. And we'll see you when we see you.